aesthetic this, aesthetic that. Everything has a core these days, and everything feels like a copy paste of some influencer or actress that you have been seeing in the media over and over again. It seems like everyone has the same Birkinified bag and everyone has a Labubu. No offense to Labubu. Labubu is cute, even though I don't have one. I do think they're cute. But the point I'm trying to make is, how do we make personal style personal again? I think the biggest culprit when it comes to things feeling inauthentic is your why. Whenever you decide to wear something, I'm not saying you have to overthink it or you have to always explain yourself to other people, because at the end of the day, your personal style is for you. It's not for other people. It is for your genuine happiness. And that's why I love getting dressed up. That's why I wear red lipstick or cut my bangs. It's my happiness. And what other people think of you is none of your business. What other people think of you is going to always be from a biased standpoint. And what they think of you is not always going to be accurate. It's always going to come from their own perspective and their own lens. And you can't control what other people feel or think about you, and you have to move on. At the end of the day, you know your authentic self. And when it comes to personal style, I think it's still important to know your why and why you wear certain things, just to avoid the copy-paste curse. Why do I have a goldfish tattoo? It probably has to do with the fact that I have been obsessed with Audrey Kawasaki, and it is because of her paintings, and her technique of painting on wood was a huge pivot for my personal art career. I always get asked, why do I have bangs? Especially the short bangs I have is pretty prevalent in most alternative spaces. I have always been obsessed with Betty Page and pinup imagery, but it was the movie Helter Skelter that was the nail in the coffin that made me realize I think these bangs can actually look good on me. And I also always get asked, why do you always wear red lipstick? During 2020, when we were wearing masks, I still wore red lipstick under my mask because it felt like me. It felt like my own personal armor. I sometimes get asked, why do you wear tabbies? It's pretty trendy. Is it this? Is it that? I love wearing tabbies because it adds a unique detail to my loafers, but also there's a mobility thing. There's a history of tabby shoes in Japanese culture where they are meant for foot health, and they're supposed to add this flexibility to your shoe that most shoes normally don't offer. And of course, I always get asked, why do you always wear black? Why do you only wear black? And some people have this misconception that the only way to dress dark is to wear all black, or to be part of some alternative subculture is to wear black, but that's not the case. You can be super colorful, you can wear pastels and still be part of a dark aesthetic of your choosing. For me, I wear black because I like how I look in black. It sometimes can be that simple, and you don't always have to have this long paragraph essay explanation, but it's still important to know why, so that you are not purposely or subconsciously copying something just because you see it over and over again. Also, there's a longevity to black. I know myself so well. I know I have tried wearing colors so many times in my life. I'm 30 and I have gone through so many different moments and pockets of my life where I wanted to try to wear color, but I always get tired of it. And at least I know with black, I won't get tired of it. When I buy clothes, I want it to last years. I want this top because I know 10 years from now, I'm probably still gonna like it. Some people think that the culprit to unoriginal style is because of the inspirations that we have. And the thing is, there's actually nothing wrong with taking inspiration when looking for a style. I have a multitude of muses that I draw inspiration from. But I think where the faux pas is that whenever people have an inspiration or like they're inspired by, like, let's say somebody, they copy them verbatim. And I feel like that's when it starts to feel a bit copy-paste. Whenever you're taking inspiration from anybody or anything, try to take inspiration from a multitude of resources so that it does become original. Take inspiration from movies, take inspiration from runway, different ethical brands or different time periods and mesh it all together so that it does become your own. Also, always know the original inspiration. A lot of people are inspired by Marilyn Monroe and her natural seductiveness, but not many know that Marilyn Monroe was inspired by the seductive nature of Jean Harlow, who was very prevalent in the 1930s. That was one of my favorite things that I took away from fashion school. For those who don't know, I majored in fashion design. And one of the things that my professors would always drill into our heads was that whenever you take inspiration from something, find out what the original was. And then once you find out what that original was, find out what the original inspiration for that was. And keep going back until you cannot go back any further. When you are taking immediate inspiration from something, that's when it starts to feel copy-paste. But when you go back to the original inspiration and you learn the history and the origins, you start to understand it on a deeper level, and that's when it can actually become your own. Nostalgia is a huge factor when it comes to making it personal. Your style, an accumulation of everything that has made you who you are today. It's the pop culture references that you grew up with. It is the styles that you saw on your mom or your favorite teacher. It was the movie that made you realize what you wanted to be when you grew up. Your style can be a storybook of all of your experiences that you have had in life. For example, if you are familiar with my videos, you'll know that I always reference 90s in some shape or form. And yes, 90s fashion has come in waves of trends and whatnot, but 90s style will always be personal to me because it will always remind me of my mom. So whenever I think of movies with Winona Ryder in it, or just 90s sitcoms, I always think of the styles that I saw photographs of my mom. I personally grew up with the 1960s version of the Addams Family. So Carolyn Jones's Morticia Addams was a huge style icon to me ever since I was in 3rd grade, when I would watch marathons upon marathons during my summers. My high school teacher would always wear this leopard print fur coat almost every day, and I can tell it was even influencing some of my other classmates. But till this day, at 30 years old, I still think about this iconic, luxurious leopard print coat. And it just proves over time that it wasn't just something because I saw it every day, but it really struck a chord with me, and it's not just nostalgic, but aesthetically it pleases my eye to the point that I wear it into adulthood. Another influential teacher to me was my middle school art teacher. She dressed in a very romantic goth way. Her music taste definitely influenced me, but so did her reading. She introduced to me my favorite manga, Godchild, which has a strong Victorian style influence. And also brings back to the why factor, how everything ends up going back to what is meaningful to you. Okay, another big thing that is making style feel unoriginal and less personal these days is the fact that we are accepting pre-manufactured, pre-curated items. And we're losing the DIY factor. We're losing the creativity, the literal personalization in our style, and we are just taking things as they are. We are just taking it from the store and accepting it as it is. A way to kind of get back into this is to be a little unafraid of learning a new skill. I understand that sewing is not for everybody. Not everybody has access to some of these materials, but there are so many different avenues that you can take that does add a little bit of a personal touch. And also kind of stepping out of your box and being a little delusional. It's okay to dream big and not eventually get there, but you need to try. 2 weeks ago, I know I majored in fashion design, but what I did not learn in fashion school was knitting and crocheting. And 2 weeks ago, I taught myself how to crochet. And this is how far I've gotten in 2 weeks. And this was all from YouTube. I didn't have a teacher. I didn't pay for any classes. I didn't, I literally used the free resource of YouTube. I bought some crochet needles I got a pack for $6, and I got yarn And now I'm making a black wool sweater because of course I am. And if crochet is not for you, or if it's a little too daunting, there are so many other skill sets that you can consider learning. Even though it's not my personal favorite, I do want to get back into sewing again. And it is something that I notice people, it may come easier to them. There's also a bunch of easy patterns out there, and it is amazing what you can do with just a bunch of rectangles. Not every garment you sew has to be super complicated, and sometimes it's nice to know how to sew to hem your own garments or add little personal touches. Learning how to knit and also just having fun with it. When you start to knit your own garments, you get to add little imperfections to it that start to feel a bit more unique. You can add beads to it, you can add holes, you can mess around with the tension. You can learn how to crochet like what I showed you, and you can add piercings and safety pins and really make it your own. You can learn to dye your own clothes, whether it's with natural dyes or even pre-made dyes, just to make it a little less daunting. And learning to embroider, add spider webs, or add a little bug on one of your skirts. But again, it doesn't always have to be this whole skill that you learn. Sometimes DIY can just be something as simple as adding on something to a pre-made garment that you already own. And again, there are so many ways to personalize something without it being too hardcore, because DIY is not dead. Embellishing items doesn't have to be as crazy as you think it is. I see these ribbon covered cardigans all over Urban Outfitters, and you can literally buy ribbon yourself, tie it into a ribbon, buy pre-made ribbons if you must, and sew it on to a sweater or cardigan of your choice. I love adding piercings to my bags, to my sweaters, and it does add a nice little personal touch. Collecting keychains and pins. I know the Birkenifying bag is really big right now, but it is actually a great way to make a bag feel personal. It also puts to good use all those keychains and pins that you have collected over time from your travel. And it's only not personal if you're buying these things pre-made. Same thing with charms. I know there's a lot of cute pre-made charm necklaces out there, but there's just something a bit more special about collecting those charms yourself, whether they're vintage or something that you inherited from your grandma that you got to add to your necklace charm, or a necklace that pays homage to a family member that you lost, or a piece that you got from a trip that means so much to you. You can add safety pins and chains. And a very light way of adding a personal touch to garments is sun printing. I'm not gonna have a video of how to sun print. However, I've seen videos of it, and it's definitely something that I do want to try because it seems like one of those low maintenance, less stress type of DIYs that seem really fun. I know I keep repeating this, but I feel like if there's anything that I can convey in this video is that stop being spoon-fed things, because that's when it stops feeling original. That's when it starts to feel like everybody else. And at the end of the day, instead of being spoon-fed, feed yourself. Instead, go out, do the research, find out the original inspirations for things. It's okay to be inspired, just don't copy it verbatim. So, for example, when I took inspiration from my art teacher, who would always wear this leopard print coat. Sometimes she would wear like a mechanic's button up underneath her leopard print coat. So instead of me styling in the same way that she did, I would wear mine with a 90s slip dress, or maybe a black jumpsuit underneath. I think another great way is to get inspired by the abstract. So instead of getting inspired by specific people or specific influencers or brands, think of something as abstract as the ocean or a jellyfish. Notice how this dress from Young Social Club and this Danielle Frankel dress, they both give off a jellyfish inspired look, but in different ways. So try to find inspiration from something in nature or an abstract piece of art, or get inspired by your own experiences from where you've traveled to or where you've come from. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, and the 1950s mid-century pinup style that is so prevalent to Las Vegas's history has made such an impact on me. And that's why retro reproduction styles such as the Vixen by Michelin Pit brand means so much to me, because it feels like my hometown. And wear it because you like it, not because everyone else likes it. Even if everyone else is wearing it, at the end of the day, if you like it, it doesn't matter. But also keep in mind, do you actually like it, or do you see it too many times? But also think about, is it practical for your life? Just because something looks good on someone doesn't mean it's gonna work for you personally. There are some questions that you can ask yourself if it actually is going to work into your life, and if it doesn't, it's okay. Think about, where do you work? Do you work in a corporate office? So are you going to need to dress a bit more modestly? Or do you work in a warehouse and you need to wear more practical garments that have sturdier fabrics? Is it warm where you live? Is it cold where you live? Think about the temperatures and being okay with accommodating to your personal life, because at the end of the day, it is your life. I always talk about dark aesthetics, and I was scrolling through TikTok and I saw these teachers, and what they wore, you could just tell that what they wear is still very integral to their personal style, but was still appropriate to wear as a school teacher. I have gotten that comment many times on my TikTok of, how do I still express my dark aesthetic as an elementary or middle school teacher? The reason why I would get asked this was because I always talk about harnesses. I always talk about like these impractical garments, and certain work settings, they don't allow harnesses because they're deemed as inappropriate, or certain skirts or certain shoes are just not deemed appropriate. So you have to think about your life and think about how you can work around it. But there are fun ways around it. Like these teachers that I mentioned, their way of dress and style is still expressive and integral to who they are as people. So of course, I have to talk about astrology. It is a huge part of why this channel was made, and it is a huge part of my identity. But when it comes to astrology, I can't deny it has been a trending thing that we see all over social media, and there are some things that I don't agree with, and I feel like there has been an overgeneralization of astrology when it comes to dressing for your birth chart, or dressing inspired by your rising or your Venus sign. And I think there are some things that people are not realizing. So I put together a quick astrology quick guide of terms if you are completely new to astrology. Everyone's birth chart is unique to you. Just because you have a certain placement doesn't mean it applies to everybody, because everyone's birth chart is kind of like unique ingredients, and the outcome is still going to be unique. So just because everyone has the same sign in a certain place doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So when it comes to astrology, you have 12 houses. And when you look at your birth chart through the circle format specifically, certain houses represent different things, and I personally don't think every house is super relevant to style. What I would focus on is the first house. The first house represents your rising sign, your ascendant sign. It is your external energy. It is your appearance, your first impression on people, and your identity. My best friend, who is an astrologer, and she definitely recommends even looking into your fifth house, because your fifth house can also represent your self-expression and how you express creative ideas, your creativity in general. And I also love to talk about your midheaven, or your 10th house, because it represents your public image in some cases. But as you can see, every house represents more than one thing. And just quickly, like if you are new to astrology, here are certain terms. So your rising is your appearance, it's your external energy. Your moon sign is who you are at your most vulnerable. My aunt, who is a professional astrologer, has said that she considers your moon sign your truest self. Your Venus sign is what you find beautiful. Venus represents love, beauty, and it is what you find aesthetically pleasing, and that's oftentimes why people recommend dressing for your Venus sign, because it's what you find beautiful, it's what excites you, it's what you find passionate. But Venus can also represent other things, but in terms of style, that is why. And your midheaven, like I mentioned, it is your own personal brand. It is your public image and also your potential. Also, something to keep in mind is if you have a stellium. So a stellium is a cluster of planets in one astrological house or sign. And for example, I have a stellium in Pisces. And what that means is I have so much Pisces in my chart. It is my rising, it is my Mercury, it is my Mars, it is my Saturn, I have a lot of Pisces in me. So even if Pisces was not my rising sign, I just have so much Pisces in me, and implementing a Pisces energy into my style, it just makes sense. It just comes naturally to me even. Okay, so there are some things that I would recommend you not doing when it comes to dressing based off of your astrological placements, and that's when it starts to not feel original, and it starts to feel like these generalized Pinterest boards and montages that we see all over TikTok. So stop using your sun sign as your spokesperson. Your sun sign is literally the tip of the iceberg of who you are. Basing who you are based off of your sun sign is just very inaccurate. Your sun sign is important to who you are, but I don't think it is a great placement for your external energy or your style. Of course, unless your sun sign happens to be a part of your stellium. Again, stop generalizing everything. Stop following stereotypes. There are certain stereotypes that are often associated with certain zodiac signs, and these stereotypes are oftentimes created because there are biases behind them. And that brings me to my next point. Always do your research and stop getting your information only online. Don't be afraid to pick up a book or get to know fellow astrologers and actually have conversations with them and get their opinions, but also cross-reference. Just like I said, get inspiration from a multitude of places. Get your astrology information from a multitude of places. If you watched this whole thing, thank you so much. I hope you have a great week. And as always, my Patreon members, everything that I showed in terms of graphically will be put into a nice PDF and will be available on my Patreon for dollar tiers and up. I hope you have a great week, and hopefully this video helped in some shape or form. Until next time, bye.